Unfortunately, I have some very sad news. I can confirm that our specialist police search and rescue team, who were continuing to search the storm drain complex, recovered the body of a young male in the North Belfast area just before 9:45 a.m. today.
This case is dark and sinister and will leave you shocked. Something about this case just doesn't add up. This is the dark and mysterious case of Noah Donohoe. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you may be in the world right now. Hello, I'm Lloyd, and today you're watching When Evil Follows. Fiona Donohoe decided to move to America and become a nanny, and it would be during this time working overseas. Fiona met a handsome young man in Boston, and his name was Emmanuel Diakapa. It was almost immediately the pair fell in love. However, when Fiona found herself pregnant in the beginning of 2005, she had a big decision to make. Now, all of the nanny jobs leading up to this point had all been cash in hand, and without proper citizenship, Fiona feared her son, being a mixed-race male, would not have the same opportunities in the US as he would have back in his mother's home country of Northern Ireland. And so, before the birth of her baby boy, Fiona moved back to Belfast with big dreams of starting a new life with her newborn baby son. Noah Peter Donohoe. He was born into the world on the 25th of November in the year of 2005 in Belfast, Northern Ireland. His mother, Fiona Donohoe, completely adored him, and as Noah grew up, the pair became completely inseparable. Fiona would even nickname her son as her rock and as her bestie. Noah was happy. He was always so happy, and he had the most cutest smile one could ever hope to see. He loved listening to music, and he enjoyed watching cartoons and superhero movies. He also enjoyed playing the cello, and by all accounts, he was actually pretty good at it too. He was a very articulate child growing up with a supersized imagination, always dreaming of one day becoming a successful doctor later on in life. Noah loved playing with his toys and drawing, and he loved art. And he loved anything that gave him the chance to really show his creative side. He loved family days out with his mum. He loved going to the zoo, to the beach, on nature walks, and he also loved walking through the woods. Noah made friends easily. He was fun to be around and very compassionate for his age. And his strong personality was really starting to show that when being around others. Noah attended St. Malachily's College Grammar School. In fact, Noah really enjoyed going to school, and he absolutely loved maths, English and science. And it didn't take long before teachers identified Noah as being highly intelligent and a super talented student. He excelled in all his subjects taken, but what he enjoyed more than anything else at school was, of course, sports. His love for sports was clearly obvious to anyone who knew him, and his most favourite sport was basketball. And so it came as no surprise when the opportunity came around for him to join a local basketball team. He took up that position with both hands. Get it? Both hands? The team was called the Peace Players, a non-denominational team who believed in bringing both Catholic and Protestant children together through the love of playing basketball. Noah was a proud team player and was starting to shape into the amazing man his mother always hoped he would be. And as he began growing up, his love for music would also intensify. He could already play the cello exceptionally well, and so he decided to try something different, and that was the guitar. When he received a brand new electric guitar for Christmas, he was absolutely over the moon, and quite honestly, he couldn't stop smiling and he just couldn't put that guitar down. He would spend most of the days and throughout the winter breaks strumming the guitar, learning as many chords as he possibly could. And yeah, everything was going swimmingly well. However, it was around the same time his mother Fiona would start to become overprotective towards Noah, because only a few doors down from where the Donohoes lived, a hostel named Queen's Quarter Housing had just recently opened up on the Universal Street in Belfast, and the local residents were completely outraged because the hostel inhabitants would vary from drug addicts to drug dealers to prostitutes and victims of abuse and sexual predators. And so all the parents living within the area would look on in horror as drug dealing and prostitution would begin taking place on their very own doorstep, leaving many to speculate that this was some kind of weird political attack, simply because the hostel was right next to a nursery centre and a secondary school, and right opposite a children's play park. An absolute inappropriate and irresponsible place to open up a hostel. Now, many of the locals all protested to have the hostel closed down, but their cries and worries simply fell on deaf ears, and the hostel still stands to this very day. It was in the summer of 2020, on the 21st of June, when Noah asked his mum if he could go outside on his bike to meet up with his friends from school to work on an educational nature project set by his school. It was getting kind of late in the afternoon, and so Noah promised his mother that he wouldn't go far, and that he wouldn't be long, and he would be back before tea time. Fiona reluctantly said okay, as she sat back and watched Noah leave the house at around 5:40 p.m. Noah left the house wearing a bicycle helmet, a blue and white sweatshirt, grey shorts, Nike trainers with a rare yellow tick on the side, a khaki North Face jacket, and a dark rucksack bag with his laptop inside. This image of Noah leaving the family home will always burn bright forever in Fiona's memory, as this would be the very last time she would see her son alive. Noah's plans was to meet up with his school friends at the Cave Hill Country Park to work on a group assignment as part of the Duke of Edinburgh award that was set by his school. However, Noah never made it to his destination, and his disappearance would shake and unsettle the city of Belfast into a worried state of panic. It was around 6:50 p.m. in the evening when Fiona began to feel unsettled and somewhat concerned, because she had told Noah that as soon as he gets to his destination at Cave Hill, he's to give her a text and to let her know that he's safe and with friends. But that text never came, and the journey should have only taken around 35 minutes. And so, quite concerned at this point, Fiona calls Noah's phone. But again, Noah didn't pick up. He didn't answer. The time is now approaching 7:45 in the evening, almost 2 hours later, and still Noah wasn't picking up his phone. So now Fiona, consumed with worry, reported her son missing to the police. And given the fact that Noah was under the age of 16 years old, the police took on the case quite seriously. 1 hour later, 2 hours later, and then 3, and then 4, and still nothing. Young Noah was still out there, somewhere, and still missing. Worse still, nobody knew where he was. Look, as a parent, I can only imagine the pure horror and fear Fiona would have been experiencing. A truly awful nightmare of the situation for any parent to find themselves in. The next day, the police and Fiona would make a live appeal on local TV, asking the general public if anybody knows the whereabouts of Noah, and if they do or see him, they're to contact the police immediately. The general public was then given a physical description and an up-to-date photograph of Noah, in hopes that somebody somewhere might know something. Now, because of Belfast's history and violence and brutality over recent years, Belfast is one of the most built-up cities within the UK, using hundreds of thousands of CCTV cameras that are fully operational 24/7 and placed in the city streets. And so police were quite hopeful that Noah would actually be captured on one of these CCTV cameras. And after the police searched through hours and hours of video footage, guess what? They found him, and the police were now able to piece together his last movements. Well, some of them at least. And his movements on the day he went missing are as followed. At 5:41, Noah leaves the family home in South Belfast. At 5:42, he heads down a residential avenue on his way to Cave Hill, as arranged. At 5:49, he's seen cycling alone in the city centre, still heading towards Cave Hill. At 5:53, he's seen on CCTV camera on York Street near the university. At this point, for whatever reason, Noah has now changed his course and is now no longer en route for Cave Hill. In fact, the route he's on would actually lead Noah through a notorious loyalist area, somewhere completely unsafe for a Catholic mixed-race boy to be. At 5:57, Noah is seen travelling through the city centre, but his backpack containing his school books and laptop is now missing. At this point in time, Noah seems to be continuously looking over his left shoulder in panic, and he seems to be cycling very quickly. At 6 p.m, just 3 minutes later, Noah is seen falling off his bike, but then he gets back on it quite quickly. He did hit his head in the fall, but seemed to be okay as he was wearing his helmet. On the next segment of footage captured of Noah, his jacket has now suddenly disappeared. And then at 6:03, he's seen cycling furiously down the same street, but this time, he's completely naked. The last sighting we have of Noah is when 2 residents claim to have seen him running naked towards them, running down North Road towards 2 men. And that was the very last time Noah Donohoe was ever seen alive. Noah's mum Fiona, she told police that he seemed scared because he kept checking constantly over his left shoulder, as if he was being chased, or as if somebody was trying to hurt him, or as if he was trying to escape from something or someone. Either way, Fiona needed answers, and she hoped that the police would be the ones to give her those answers through their lines of investigation. And as for the 2 residents who claim they saw Noah running down the street naked towards 2 men the day he went missing, well, they both gave statements to the police, both claiming that they thought it was some kind of prank or practical joke. But what was eerily creepy and strange about the 2 statements made by these 2 local women is the fact that they both were totally adamant that they both didn't know each other and that they had never spoken to each other before about this case, but yet both of their statements made to police were exactly the same, like quite literally, word for word, the same. Even more strange and suspicious is that one of the women that gave an identical statement, she miraculously also found Noah's bike on her driveway. What's the odds of that then, eh? And from my point of view, if I was to see a child running down the street completely naked and in a panic, I certainly wouldn't come to the conclusion that this was some kind of prank or joke. How on earth anybody could come to that as a normal conclusion, it's completely beyond me. Now, the police did do a light search of the residential area initially, but they didn't find anything of any concern, which again is just crazy because this was the last place where Noah was seen alive. Either way, Fiona needed answers. She believed that the police would do everything in their power to help her find her child. But after a short time into the missing persons investigation, Fiona would start to see flaws and cracks within the police inquiries, prompting Fiona into asking the question, why is more not being done? No real door-to-door investigation was ever carried out, and with little to no formal interviews ever taken place for those eyewitnesses who claim they saw Noah running naked through the streets the day he went missing. In the modern day and age of policing, many homes now have a cam door ring bell. Surely these cams would have been absolutely vital, but no. This strategy seemed to be completely ignored. In fact, very little to no media exposure about this missing persons case was ever aired on British television. Fiona was also told by the police that should she require any further information, then she could appeal for it herself, which she did 9 times. However, the police would later claim that due to severe budget cuts, the cost of a blown-out investigation was almost impossible, and many of Fiona's attempts were denied. And that's absolutely unthinkable. Here you have a young missing persons case, and the police can't give everything because they financially don't have the budget to do policing work. Like, what the actual Because of this dead-end search, Fiona grew more and more desperate, and so she took to the internet to post her concerns on Facebook and Twitter, hoping that somebody somewhere out there could heal her pain and give her support. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the media coverage of this case in the UK was very little to none, the believed reasons being Noah was mixed race, and the authorities didn't want to cause any more upset within the general public, especially after the George Floyd case. And for all you people out there that don't know about George Floyd was an American black man who was the victim of a cruel and clearly motivated racial attack by violent and racist police officers. Sadly, George Floyd lost his life, and the backlash to his murder was huge, as hundreds of thousands of unhappy, like-minded people took to the streets, causing a chain of riots and mayhem. Clearly, people were seriously unhappy with what happened to George Floyd, and racial issues needed to change, and quickly, thus giving birth to the Black Lives Matter. Whether this George Floyd theory is true or not, many people felt that the disappearance of Noah Donohoe was being muted and brushed under the rug. The area where Noah was last seen is an area where the locals claim that no Catholic mixed-race boy should ever be visiting. Ever. And yeah, it's absolutely heartbreaking that these areas still exist in so-called civilized countries. But they do. Even to this day. Because of the known troubled location where Noah went missing, and also the seamlessly rehearsed word-for-word eyewitness statements given by the locals, many still believe that there's something much more sinister behind Noah's disappearance. Now, during the initial search of Noah Donohoe, highly trained police dogs were brought in and used to see if they could pick up his scent. A local storm drain was checked, but the police dogs couldn't find anything conclusive, and no new leads came to light. There just seemed to be no trace of this 14-year-old boy anywhere, like he's just completely disappeared, vanished into fresh air. There were no so-called clues, and nobody knew where he was. One of the strange mysteries to this case is that nobody saw Noah getting undressed. He's seen in one CCTV clip dressed. Then in the next CCTV clip captured of him, he's riding his bike without no jacket. Then, just moments later, he's frantically pedaling down the street on his bike and continuously looking over his shoulder in fear the next time Noah would be seen on CCTV. He was frantically pedaling his bike and, by now, was completely naked. And yet, he's never seen removing any of his clothes. The mobile phone he was carrying was eventually found in a local children's play park, just a mere 28 minutes walk away from where Noah went missing. His biking helmet was also found just within a 3-minute walk away from the location he was last seen. And what's even more strange and eerie about this case is Noah's hoodie and trainers were neatly placed up on a wall at 63 Northwood Road. Even more odd and creepy, Noah's North Face jacket and dark shorts and his underpants have never been found. However, it would be Noah's backpack, which contained his laptop and his school books with his name on it, that would cause quite the stir. Sometime into the investigation, the police received an anonymous tip-off about a man named Darryl Paul, who was somehow linked to this case. So who is Darryl Paul? And how's he linked to this case, I hear you all asking? Well, Darryl Paul is a 32-year-old troublesome fellow with, let's say around 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 190 convictions against his own name. 190. I wonder how many of them are Section 5s. Anyways, he lived about a 3-minute walk away on foot from the very last place Noah was seen alive, on Northwood Road. The anonymous caller told police that Darryl Paul, along with a female friend, had entered into a cash converters, similar to like a pawn shop, and tried to sell a laptop along with other items from inside a black rucksack. And because at the time Noah's case was all over the press, the shop assistant who was working behind the counter took one look at the laptop and one look at the school books, and then quickly turned them away. Now, as soon as the police heard this new information, they decided to pay Darryl Paul a little home visit at around 4 a.m. in the morning. And after searching his house, the police found Noah's rucksack and his school books. The search for the laptop would then lead police to Darryl's female friend's house. And you will never guess where she was living. She was staying in a room at the Queen Quarters hostel. That same hostel Fiona and the other parents were complaining about, only doors away from where Noah Donohoe lived with his mum. Now, Both Darryl and his girlfriend were arrested for theft on Noah's items, but were not charged, however, in connection with Noah's disappearance, purely because the police were able to identify Darryl and his girlfriend miles away on CCTV at the same time Noah disappeared, and so no new leads there. It was now almost a week later. 5 days had passed and Noah was still out there somewhere, and still missing. Fast forward just 2 more days, and the date is now the 27th of June, in the same year of 2020, when a body would be found. And sadly, the body would soon be identified as 14-year-old Noah Donohoe. A second in-depth search of the storm drains at Northwood Road were eventually carried out, and that's when the deceased body of Noah was finally discovered, putting a tragic end to this horrific 7-day search. Once and for all. And even though Fiona was able to grieve for her sad loss of life, her questions were still totally and completely open and unanswered. So had Noah been murdered? And if so, who did this? And why? Almost straight away, law enforcement began to piece together the timeline to Noah's death. And quite quickly they came back with the conclusion that there was no suspicious or foul play. Quite a bizarre and interesting bold statement to make to the general public, especially when the autopsy hadn't been carried out yet. The police began pushing the narrative that Noah had fallen off his bike and hit his head, gained serious concussion, got confused, then decided to strip off and then walk into a storm drain where he got stuck and then drowned.
Why, yes! That makes perfect sense to me!
However, the actual autopsy report stated that Noah had no signs of head swelling and no signs of head trauma, just merely a small graze on the left side of his cheek. The autopsy report also stated that Noah was not under the influence of any alcohol, and that he wasn't under the influence of any kind of drug. But the one thing that is clear is that the autopsy confirmed that Noah did indeed die from drowning. So did Noah just decide to walk himself into a storm drain and drown himself? Well, that's a 1000% no. He was a happy kid. He loved his life, he loved his mum, he had a passion for his education, he loved music, he loved playing the cello and guitar. He had a strong support system around him, both at school and at home. And yet all his teachers, friends and family would all confirm that fact. So, just maybe Noah had some sort of mental break, although that's also highly unlikely, purely because Noah has never experienced any kind of emotional trauma. He was a healthy and strong-minded kid. He was loved and happy, and he focused on his future. He had big dreams of one day becoming a doctor, and there's no history of mental health within his family. Now, that's not to say that he couldn't have had a mental breakdown, but that's just so highly unlikely. Now, during my research into this case, I have also noticed 7 suspicious factors surrounding Noah's death, and no doubt these are the same factors that plays on Fiona's mind, both the day and night. Over 180 plus CCTV door ring bell cameras were installed on people's front doors. That lined the journey Noah would have had to take on that day he disappeared, and yet only 5 of these cameras were recovered and examined. Noah's body was found in a storm drain, but bear in mind this storm drain is filled twice a day when the tide comes in. It's also filled with potent sewage, and yet Noah's body had very little damage. The only damage was water damage to his hands and feet. There was no damage from rats and other rodents, no damage from insects or the potent sewerage that was in that drain, despite the fact that he'd been in there for almost a week. During Noah's autopsy, the water that was taken from his lungs was never compared to the water inside the storm drain where his body was found. So, respectfully, we don't actually know if he was actually drowned elsewhere and then he was put in that storm drain by his killer. Something that further supports this theory is the fact that just 3 days earlier, before Noah's body was discovered in that storm drain, the police and police dogs searched that drain thoroughly, and believing they did such a good job, they actually padlocked it up on their way out. Also, the woman who claimed to have found Noah's bicycle on her drive. She's the same woman who gave the perfect matching word-for-word eyewitness statement. You remember her? The one that was never formally interviewed by the police. Well, her own back garden is where the storm drain entrance is installed. So she found his bike on her driveway after he supposedly took his own life in her back garden, and she saw nothing? but claims she did see Noah running naked down the street towards two men. She thought that that was a practical joke. What the f***? And also, why haven't the police done a full search for these two suspicious men? Then all of a sudden Noah turns up dead in her back garden. I'm not gonna lie here. All of this just seems very, very, very suspicious. The police have been questioned about these facts so many times. They openly admit that much of the information about this case is being withheld from the general public, and that includes Noah's family. PC Superintendent Chief Clark has also even admitted that this case is super strange, but he still is adamant and believes that there's no sign of foul play. And as for Fiona Donohoe, she continues to believe that her son was indeed murdered, and she walks through life without any of the questions answered, and a heavy and broken heart. Hello there, and thank you for watching another episode of When Evil Follows. If you have enjoyed today's case, then please support our channel by murdering that like button. Also remember to hit the bell so you never miss out on any of our amazing up and coming videos, just like this one. So what do you think to this dark and strange twisted case? Do you believe that Noah was murdered? And if so, who do you believe could have done it? Do you think the police could have done more? Let me know all of your thoughts in the comment section below. I read every one of your comments and I will respond to each and every one of you. And now with that being said, and Halloween quickly approaching, here's 2 more videos, guaranteed to put you in the Halloween spirit. And as always, until next time, please look after yourself, stay safe, and I'll see you again the next time when evil follows. Bye.